Like to call us meeting to order. If you all rise and join us for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't think I've ever heard that in a round before.
I think we're sounding better. We do have a proposed agenda in front of us. Is there any changes or alterations?
Mr. Chair, I would ask that we include a 12A or include it as part of 12. There's a police service agreement that's part of our packet. The signature page does reference the select board having an authorized signer, and I'd like us to be able to approve that service agreement either as part of the motion for the special events permit or as a standalone item.
Yeah, you're right, because that really is a separate action from the special event permit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, service agreement approval added under 12A. Any other changes? If not, a motion to approve with the change.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that moves us forward with considering approval of the April 7th, 2020 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented with the round of changes and grammatical updates.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And that moves us over to announcements. Elaine, if you would please.
Announcements for April 14th, 2020. For a list of COVID-19 resources, and the latest information on changes to Barrytown operational services and events due to COVID-19, visit barrytown.org and click on the first announcement link. Please be aware that town playgrounds and other recreational facilities are not being disinfected. The town bike paths, the town forest trails, and the school forest trails are all good options if you need exercise. While exercising, it's a good idea to keep farther distance between you and people you don't work with. The more strenuous exercise, the further the distance from 10 to 20 yards. This is 5 to 10 times further away than the social distancing rule for walking past someone in, say, a grocery store. If you own the Vermont home that you live in, remember to file a homestead declaration form or HS 22. Although this changed the due date from April 15th to July 15th, 2020 to file without penalty, please do file it as soon as you are able so that your first tax bill is more likely to be accurate. If you have questions about the homestead declaration, contact the Barrytown Assessor's Office at 479-2595.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements?
Mr. Chair, I have one question for Elaine, if I might.
Yes.
Under the second item that was announced, what was the source for the information pertaining to the social distancing while doing exercise?
That's a question. So it has not been, it's not official by the CDC or the Vermont Department of Health, but there was a Belgian study done which implied that when you're exercising, you're breathing more heavily and there's more of a dispersal. So even though we haven't seen that officially, it seems wise to just as a precaution, might as well keep your distance.
Thank you.
Yeah, Elaine, if you want, I do have a link located somewhere else related to that study for exercising, and they were actually doing about calling it being caught up in the slipstream when you're exercising, biking, or running behind somebody, and how that can travel significantly further. So I can include that too if we want to throw that out there just as a reference. But yeah, it's a new study out there about how the germs will pass further. So it's a difference between exercising, being behind somebody versus just walking by them briefly, like in a grocery store, or passing them on the bike path. They actually recommend, if you're going to be doing stuff like that, staggering out.
Sure, thank you, John.
Yeah, I'll just give myself here. No. All right, anything else?
If you, this just to save you a step. I'll
What's
just
that?
go ahead and do that. I do actually have the study links myself, so just to save you a step, I can just go ahead and post it.
Okay. Thank you. And if nothing else for announcements, we'll proceed with received guests for non-agenda items.
I'm checking the conference line portal. It doesn't look like we have any guests, not even the reporter.
Okay, then we will proceed with number 7 on our agenda, which is department head visits. First one listed is DPW and town engineer. Josh, how are you?
Good. Is Mike on or is he
I'm here.
not there?
Here.
You want me to go first? You want to go first, Mike?
Do I want to go first?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, sounds like Mike's there because I didn't see him signed in.
Yep.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Mike. Person. So, this is my second quarterly. I thought my last quarterly was going to be my first and only, but apparently not. I'm thinking I might even be here for another one. I'm not sure. So, the last 3 months of our quarterly, which started in January, obviously. Obviously, our main dealings are plowing, salting, sanding, keeping the roads ready to go. So, obviously, in January, we did plenty of that. So when we weren't doing that, we were doing Christmas trees because it was Christmas tree pickup season. We finished filling the mechanics pits in the shop and concreted those. And we are using our new lifts and they work extremely well. We're very happy with those. So, red water meters, filled potholes. Started marking ash trees in January, but did not get to cut any at that time. Did start graveling the snow bridge, which was on our summer project, but hadn't got to it. So when we got a few days of nice weather, we started graveling that road. And we did end up having to camera the sewer line on Mill Street for an issue that apparently the state project had missed the sewer line. And, so we ended up cameraing that. So that took care of pretty much most of January as to what we ended up doing. Like I said, most of it was plowing, salting, and sanding, of course. But February kind of brought the same thing as far as plowing, salting, and sanding, obviously. But when we weren't doing that, we did paint the shop offices because they hadn't been painted in quite a few years. Did mark some more ash trees, and we started cutting ash trees. As of right now, Curtis, Barkley, Sunset, and Hapanetto is cut as far as ash trees are concerned. And when I say that, what we can. I mean, if it's too big or leaning the wrong way or near a power line, we didn't do that. But what we could do, those roads are done. So obviously, we still have a lot of ash trees to cut, but again, it becomes a fill-in most of the time. So,
Hey, Mike, can I ask you a question about that?
yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of trees with orange smiley faces and frowny faces painted on them. Are those the ash trees?
Yes, I think they were being creative when they
Okay.
started marking ash trees. We probably marked for almost a straight week, so there's probably trees that are marked that we probably won't cut for another 3 years. I mean, they a lot marked by the time they.
Yeah.
Done.
Okay.
So,
I'm
yeah.
afraid I don't know an ash tree when I see one, but I noticed the trees with the frowny faces painted on them, so I thought they probably were the ash trees.
Probably got almost as many ash trees also through the power companies we have because they're cutting during the power lines that if the landowner doesn't want them, then they call us and we end up picking them up. So actually our shed's almost full of wood right now because of that, so which works out good for us. So other than that, in February, we did have to do some snow removal on a sidewalk area in East Barre a couple of different times. Of course, we've had to clean around hydrants, to make sure that we were able to use the hydrants if needed. And then we started doing the bus turnaround sign survey, which I know you were aware of. And actually, I believe all those signs have been taken down that are no longer, useful. So that's been taken down. March came along, again, the same routine as far as plow, salt, and sanding, obviously, and cutting ash trees. We have been installing, and I don't know if you've noticed on some of my monthly reports, but what we call MXUs, which is the water meter setup so that they can actually drive the roads instead of having to go read each meter. I think last I heard we were down to like 30 meter MXUs to install, and I think that got kind of interrupted because we had to read water meters this past couple of weeks, so I think we're like 30 left to do, so not a lot, but still a few. We had a sewer collar on Quarry Hill. The house just before, as you're going down Quarry Hill, the house just before the railroad track. I thought that the sewer line might have been broken because there was actually a sinkhole there. And so we actually cameraed that line, and there's nothing wrong with the sewer line, it was just a sinkhole. We did end up with, and I think all of you are aware of it, we end up with another sewer call over on West Cobble Hill, which is kind of still pending, but nothing that, from our standpoint, that we think might is our issue, but I guess it is still pending, so. In the last couple of weeks, we have sent the graders out, not necessarily to fine grade your roads, if you are on gravel roads, but at least fill the potholes and the ruts, and I'm tickled pink as far as mud season. It's been great. I mean, it hasn't been bad at all. I mean, yeah, a little mud, but I've seen a lot worse in my 30 years that I've been here, so. And pretty much almost out of the mud season, I think. We're gonna start grading roads probably a lot more better here in the next week or so, I think, so. Pretty happy with that. We have been doing sign work in all 3 of the months when we can. We've also filled some of our time with building new barricades for construction season when, you know, again, when guys have time. Added to all of that, as far as what we've done also, for the rec department, we've been keeping the parking lots open all winter long so that people can use the forest and all that. We've been doing the doggy mitt cleanup for when people are using the bike, the bike path, so that that doesn't get overfilled. And we also, of course, assisted with the Freezing Fun baseball tournament there, so that we got them to where they were happy with everything they needed there. So to sum up the winter, because I don't know if I'll be asked this, but I think you're gonna be happy to hear, I guess. We stayed within our salt budget. Our salt budget was $200,000, we spent $199 and change, so we were right close to where we needed to be. I counted 87 different events that we went out to address. Now, when I say that, it doesn't mean that some events we didn't have to address, you know, a second or third time, depending on how long the storm was, but 87 different times we had to go out. I should say, I got scared, and we had to start mixing a little sand with our salt, thinking we weren't gonna have enough. I figured we mixed about 250 yards of sand in our salt towards the end. But that being said, I'm guessing somewhere around 700 tons are left in the salt shed, of which about 300 tons is mixed with sand. So if running my numbers, if we had not mixed any sand, I'm thinking we'd have 50 to 100 tons of salt left, somewhere around there. But so there's about, like I said, approximately 700 tons of total, including what's mixed with sand. And my numbers, I figured we put out 3,664 yards of sand on the gravel roads. So that was pretty much our winter as far as that's concerned. As far as equipment, and I think you guys were aware of that, we tried selling a dump truck, it didn't sell. I think it's a bad time because of the virus thing. So that's still with us. We have a 1-ton that should be for sale, but I don't think that we're gonna attempt that either, because I don't think it's any better time to be doing that. And I don't think we've had a full staff all winter. Seems like there's always been somebody out for something or other. nobody is ill, so there's nobody sick of any kind, but, again, like I said, sometimes it's hard to do some stuff because you don't seem to have a full team. And currently, what we're trying to do is keep people separated as much as possible so that they're not all, together, so that we can still get things done as best we can, but not everybody conjured together. That is about all I've got for you, unless you have some questions, I guess.
Mike, I have a couple of questions. What's the issue with the sign on Lower Phelps and Anderson that it needed to be replaced twice in 1 month? Is the location an issue?
Is that the one that, I don't know, on Lower Phelps? I guess I'm not sure. I didn't hear of any issue of location, I guess. I'm not sure why it was replaced a second time.
Notes say that it's been run over twice in 1 month.
Well, I know that there was one that was run over, and I know that the one on the bottom of, because I'm trying to bill somebody right now, and I can't seem to get hold of the person, but there was one that was run over that we were supposed to bill the person, and
That was Partridge Road.
Yes, that's the one. Yes, Partridge Road, yes. Do you know do you remember, Josh, the situation on the one on Phelps? I can't remember it.
I don't remember that one.
Okay, I just wanted to give you notice also, in the event that you don't know, the road sign for Sunset Road at the corner of Barclay, Phelps and Sunset is missing.
Okay.
I noticed that when I was walking yesterday. And one final note, on the generator test record for February, there's a note that there's an emergency light outside the conference room in the town office that's out. That's been noted month after month after month. Is that something we could get taken care of sometime?
Is that the one that's in the hall?
I believe so. It says emergency light outside conference room.
Yep, I took care of that one yesterday.
Okay.
How about the one that was inside the conference room down there? I haven't been there in quite some time because I've been dialing in, but.
I did not know about that one. The other one that I knew about was in the hallway in the police department.
Okay. There was one in the conference room above the door that I remember, and maybe it's been taken care of. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
This is Paul. I'm not sure if it's a question for Mike or for Josh, but was there some kind of a spill incident yesterday on Mill Street?
Josh can answer that because he responded to it, but yes, I guess there was.
Yeah, so yesterday, 2 o'clock, we got a phone call that there was a sheen on the road on Mill Street. When I went down, the sheen was pretty much across the whole lane of Mill Street, and it went down Upper Mill Street. Well, it started at Upper Mill Street, went down Mill Street to 110. And it looked like the person turned up 110 and then back down West Circle Road and then back up Mill Street. How much was really spilled, we don't know.
I noticed that sheen in front of the post office as well.
Yep. Yeah, and so I asked Chris Violet to come down, and we kind of talked about what we could do as the fire department. And there really wasn't much we could do. We called A&R, or Chris called A&R, and they sent their spill response team, Absolute. I can't think of the name. Chris might know, but the spill response team came out, and we put some of the socks around the DIs to catch the sheen off the road.
We don't know who was responsible for it, though.
I haven't heard anything. Chris may know something now, but as of yesterday afternoon, we did not know.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, we still don't know. The spill response team was working with A&R, and an A&R enforcement officer was coming up, and they were going to investigate it and try to figure it out. We walked around and with the spill response team and pretty good rain. And we couldn't come up with a culprit. We asked some people and nobody seemed to really know. So I don't know if they ever came to any conclusion or not.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
So it looks like we're all set with that part. So we'll slide right over to Josh, town engineer.
Okay, so mine's not going to be that long because I only started just over 2 months ago. So halfway through February, I started, and most of my first couple of weeks was organizing my office and getting familiar with both the paper files and the digital files. From there, I worked on or helped with the sewer, water, and highway budgets. And then later in the month, I met with the VTrans resident for Mill Street project. He went over with me what they have left and what they did last summer. And right now that project's on hold because of the whole COVID stuff. So then into March and April, we went back to the Mill Street project because the homeowner on Mill Street that was having issues decided that he was going to get a contractor in, and we opened up the road and found out that C-Card, when they went through with the new water or sewer line, they actually never hooked him up. So the responsibility has been given back to C-Card to deal with that issue, and it's off the homeowner's side. C-Card is still responsible for the patch right now. So the other day I had them come back and fill in some of those potholes that were created over time. So other than that, on that one, I submitted the town.
I'm sorry, before you did, so does that mean that home was not connected to the sewer system all that time?
Correct.
So where was their discharge going?
It was basically just backing up into the pipe. It dead end at the ground, but it never really went anywhere from there. They tried a bunch of things they thought it was a clog and got the rooter stuck in it. And so it's been kind of a mess for them.
Yeah, I bet.
But
okay, thank you.
So I submitted the tier 2 hazardous waste reporting to the state in March. I put together the construction schedule with paving construction schedule with Carl and Jay and Mike. I have changed the specs for the paving a little bit. So this year we are paving and milling all in one contract. This was in hopes that we'll give them a duration between milling and paving. So 14 days they have from the end of milling to the beginning of paving, and that will hopefully keep the road from breaking up before they pave it. Some other things we had in the paving spec before was a Marshall mix, which is kind of an older version of mix that isn't necessarily used anymore. So I changed it to a super pave mix. And then those bids will be back next week for the paving and milling all in one contract. So I also worked on the sewer allocation policy, which we'll go over tonight. I worked with Cindy to work with the permit conditions language for driveway permits. I contacted a summer intern for employment, and he's going to start May 11th. How that works out with the coronavirus, and may change that a little bit, but right now it's May 11th. I just put together the bonding wearing course bid package, and I want to put that out this week. I also in front of you the VTrans highway grant applications. Those I got together, and we had a grant from before for Windy Wood Culvert. I asked for an extension of time on that grant due to COVID and also a change of scope. So before it was going to be a complete replacement of the culvert, and now we're just going to do a slip liner, which is a cheaper version of it, but they required a change of scope for that. Also, Fecto, the development up on off Red Farm Road, they have started doing the sewer line there. So right now from Red Farm Road up the new road, or to be new road, the sewer line's installed to the second catch base, or second manhole, sorry. And then along the bottom side of the development where the retaining wetlands are. So they've installed that all the way to the end of the last retaining wetland, and they've started building the wetlands just to hold water, not necessarily be the wetland part yet. So they can filter it out that way. Also, I started a Barrytown Department of Public Works Facebook page that's up now. So I've started putting some things on there as far as notices and that sort of stuff. As far as COVID goes, Mike sort of touched on it. You know, we're trying to keep them separated as much, you know, trying to keep the max group together as 2 people. Every employee is supposed to take a different vehicle so that they're not riding together unless there's, for some reason, they can't. And if there's shared equipment such as the loader, they should use gloves to get in and out and take them off so that they're not spreading anything that way. They've been given their own bottle of disinfectant, each of them. They each have 2 homemade masks that my mother-in-law, Lynn Murray, made for them. So they all have 2 homemade masks now. Some of the other protocols are, you know, upon entering any building, they're supposed to wash their hands. Morning and afternoon, disinfect, you know, all surfaces, handles, eating areas in the building. And at the beginning of the day, disinfect their work truck, you know, their handle, steering wheels, that sort of stuff. Right now we're looking at possibly starting them at shifts, different times, or a 10-hour day. We just got to work out the work so it matches with the schedules. And we're trying to get some face shields and N95 masks for the sewer and Vector truck, so that there's a little extra protection for those guys working in the manholes. I think that's all I got, unless there's questions.
Any of the board members questions?
I have a question about the paved road work. You've probably heard last year we had an issue where even though our bids that went out specified that the winning bidder was not to subcontract the work without permission of the town, we had an issue where the winning bidder did exactly that, and we really were left without a lot of recourse. Have we done anything this year to sort of prevent that from happening again?
There is some language in the bid. They're still allowed to sub it out, but they have to tell us, and we have the choice to reject it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happened last year. Is, you know, that language I think was in there last year, and they, at the time that they bid, they said they were going to do the work themselves, but when it came time to actually do it, they subbed it out. But at that point, we already had the roads milled, and we were kind of stuck and needed to have the work done.
Right. That'll be definitely something I'm going to be looking for sooner than later. I added some things in there that they have to get me ahead of time, or they can't start, or that we will take money away from them, basically.
Yeah, one of the things we had discussed was not only having that clause in there, but if they had gone outside the scope of that contract and did subcontract it, that there's going to be some kind of financial repercussions to it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that having the milling and paving in the same contract is a good idea. It will be helpful.
Paul, do you have any more? Or are you good?
Well, I guess I hate to, I guess we've never beaten this dead horse with Josh, so it might as well be the first one to do it. I don't know if you've had a chance to dive into the Sierra Lavin Road project. You know, there's a considerable amount of work that needs to be done before that can be paved. It's currently the pavement's all ripped up and it's gravel. Any idea when that will begin, and will that be town staff doing that, or is there a contractor that's going to do that?
Right now, town staff is going to do it, and I believe we were looking at doing that in June. I don't have that note in front of me, but I believe it was, early summer.
Okay. All right, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members?
I have just one quick question for Josh pertaining to the bids that were sent out for paving and milling. How many contractors are those bids sent out to?
Hold on one second and I will grab it for you.
In addition to sending it directly to them, do I assume we posted on the state's bidding website?
We did not post it unless Carl did that, but I sent it out to the people that we paid for us last year, and then I added a few extra contractors that I knew from the state, from working with the state. I believe there was 10 or 12, but I can grab that. Construction 2020.
I guess I would just say that for a guy who claimed he didn't have a whole lot because he hasn't been there all that long, sounds like you've accomplished quite a lot, Josh.
Thanks. So I sent it out to 14 total. I've heard back from just 2 of them that said they weren't going to be bidding on it. Would you like to know who they are?
No, I'm just interested in how many contractors were contacted.
So 14 total.
Okay. So we have some new ones in there from who we normally had sent it out to in the past then. Is that safe to say? Okay.
Yep. So let's see. I believe the first one that I added was Blacktop out of West Leb, and Petcom Industries, which is out of Beddington, but they do work up this way, so I added them. And Wilt Paving, which is out of Rutland, and they're not shy to come over this way either.
Okay.
Excellent.
That's all I
Jack,
have.
did you have anything?
Nothing, sir.
Josh, just want to say thanks. As Bob pointed out, you've really jumped in, and I've already appreciated you going through and doing things just a little bit differently from where we've done them before, just trying to get some different results. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And if you have nothing else for us, we'll hold you for a later topic. But for this one, we'll move over to Fire Department. Chris Violet.
Sounds good.
I'm going to let you see me.
Oh, yay.
You want me to turn the camera off, just tell me and I'll turn it off. So fire department was last here beginning of January. Since that period, January through March, it's been fairly, they don't like me to use a couple of key words, but I'm not very superstitious, so that's slow and quiet. January and February were abnormally quiet, and March was a little bit busier, and April's been fairly quiet for the most part. But 34 calls during that period of time. We didn't have any of our own structure fires. We did respond to 10 mutual aid structure fires. Not all of those were significant. A couple of them were chimney fires. A couple of them were but several of them were pretty significant. We did respond to that fatal fire over in Northfield. So we had a few experiences with fatal incidences because of all the calls. 12 of them were mutual aid, and one of those also include a motor vehicle accident with a fatality, and we helped with extrication. We responded to 4 alarm activations during that period of time, 2 commercial, 2 residential. The 2 commercial included the Montessori School and one at HP Hood at a cost to the town of approximately $800. And we have already responded to a motorcycle accident this year, a couple of weeks ago in Eastbury at the roundabout. Fairly serious accident. With regards to training, we were recertified in flagger training back in January, so we do that every couple of years. That allows us to flag in the roadway. The league puts that on for us. We did some pumping. We trained, both Southbury and Eastbury did separately, with the new airbags that the association donated. These are the rescue airbags that you put under, say, a vehicle and put air to it, and it lifts the vehicle up. Anything you need to lift, you can use these airbags. We did that down at the auto clinic both times. We used the Barre Auditorium to do some SCBA training. We've done that before. Josh Stewart, Captain Stewart, manages to pull that off for us. It gives us a nice big area that's really dark. We do it in the basement, and we can go in there and we can do a lot of different scenarios and get a lot of people through that. So that's always good training. We did some training with our UTV and some fire hydrant training. We didn't train in March, and I'll get into a little bit more. We didn't train at the last training night, March, because of the COVID, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Other stuff, we held our association meeting, our annual association meeting in January, elected some new board of directors, and prior to that meeting, the auxiliary provided us with a nice meal, as they try to do every year, to show their appreciation. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the rabies clinic was postponed. At this point, it will likely be canceled. I don't know that we're going to find a time to be able to do it. A week ago today, we opened up the bids for the new fire truck, the fire tanker. In the process of going through those, and hopefully we'll have a recommendation for you for next Tuesday night on that. We put out 8 bids and we received 6 back. And beyond that, COVID stuff. Early on, we started taking some measures to try to separate the 2 stations as much as possible. The thought being that if somebody were to come down with it, that if we separated the 2 stations, we wouldn't end up with it. The effort was being made that it wouldn't end up going through the whole entire fire department, which has happened in the country and different places. So we thought we're kind of fortunate because we have the 2 stations that we would try to keep the 2 stations separate, and as a result, maybe keep one of them up and running. We haven't had any issues. All of them have been told that if they're not feeling well, just like anybody else in any other workplace, to please let me know and refrain from coming to the fire station. Restricted all the members to their assigned station. So in other words, if your home station is Eastbury, try to stay at Eastbury, and if possible, for them not to go back and forth for the same reason I just stated, just to try to make sure that if one gets it, we all don't get it. In that same vein, we're trying to reduce dual responses. So if both stations aren't needed at a call, absolutely needed, we may hold one station back. If we don't know immediately, we try to keep whichever trucks or units are further away, we might just have them stage until we've assessed the situation. Again, just in an effort to try to keep the two stations apart. We've limited the non-fire department personnel coming into the fire stations as much as possible. We're practicing social distancing at both the station and at scenes as much as possible. As you can imagine, sometimes that's not always possible, but we try to use common sense in our heads as much as we can. I think they're all doing a very good job with that. If you go to the fire station during a call, we got a nice big bay, so everybody can kind of stand around in a circle a long ways away from each other and talk or do whatever. I provided them a kit. My biggest fear was if we went to a call, such as like a motor vehicle accident, where we're having to extricate a patient, we'd be in close proximity to them. So they've all been provided I call it a little kit. It's basically a baggie that has a surgical mask, a pair of safety glasses that are more like goggles because they seal around the eye, and gloves that they could have in a minute's notice to put those on in order to, if they can't maintain a safe distance from anybody, they'll have those available for them to use. We provided cleaning products and asked for all the surfaces, just like everybody else, to be sanitized regularly. We altered, and I gave them guidance on how to handle and respond to fire alarms and CO alarms, just to try again to avoid going into houses or places that might be a higher likelihood of finding the virus. We worked with EMS. I worked with Chris Lamonda because we do EMS lift assist, where we don't always go to the fire station first. So we wouldn't have access to some of the safety stuff that we might have that I just mentioned. But he's made a place on the ambulances, which they have anyway, and we generally know where it is. So if we need to put on gloves before we help them, we know generally where to go, but he's made a place where he has all of that stuff readily available and marked so that we know easily where to find it. Gloves, face shields, masks, things like that. The three emergency service department heads, myself, Chris Lamonda, and Chief Dodge, worked together on an alternate dispatch plan if in the case that Lamoille were to lose the vast majority of their dispatchers. We took some steps and we kind of brainstormed that in the unlikely event that happens, and it is unlikely that would happen, but felt it too proactive to look into that. And looking in to get some cloth masks, actually working with Josh Martineau on that with his mother-in-law. As he mentioned, she provided some masks for DPW, and I would like to get some of them as well for the firefighters. I think it's probably, I'm hearing that it's going to become mandatory probably to use them in public, and I think it's just probably good practice, especially when we're in the trucks together, and that's pretty hard to reduce. So that's coming. And finally, the training, as I mentioned, we had to cancel the last training in March for April. What we're doing is providing them actually with the help of the Waterbury Fire Department, because they're putting this together and they're sending out to most of us basically training videos. There's a couple every week, and so I'm asking them to watch that video, take a 10-question test, quiz, I guess, on each one of them, and that's how we're trying to do some training right now. And I think that's it for fire. Last but not least, the radio study. I started to work on making some comments on that I thought might help when you saw it. I haven't got back to it since I started, but hopefully soon we'll give you that radio study and we can take a look at it. So that's all I have for fire, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Questions for the chief?
Yeah, this is Paul. I know you just said that you're still working on on your comments, but I know the shortest term fix in that seemed to be replacing the police department antenna up on Millstone Hill with an omnidirectional. And is that something that's, or maybe I should have asked the police chief, but is that something that we're making plans to go ahead and do, or who would do that work for us?
The answer is yes. I think I chimed in on one other meeting about it during one of your budget committee meetings too. That is the easiest and quickest thing to do. But I also think, because one of the recommendations of this radio study is to move the rest of our communications equipment from Mount Pleasant down to Millstone. And what I'm hoping to do is, if we're going to have to work with the state on changing that antenna for PD, I'd like to do it all at the same time. So
that would make sense.
Because and I'm not suggesting that we change everything now. What I'm talking about is we do the police antenna. That's pretty easy. And I'd like to move one of the radios from Mount Pleasant that we're not actually using. We have a full transmitter up there, and move that down to Millstone to kind of try it out. We can Public Works, Fire EMS, and who am I forgetting in that?
EMS.
Well, Fire and EMS would be on the same frequency,
That's
so
true,
I guess
right.
DPW is the other one. So we could actually try it from there if we can, so that'll accomplish a couple things. Number one, that'll initiate the conversation with the state, because if we're going to even think about moving down there, we have to initiate that conversation, get permission to do this test, move that radio down there, and then program it with the fire/EMS frequency and test it. And then we could program it with the Public Works frequency another time and test that as well. And just before we make any big decisions, which that is one of the big decisions, we could actually test it and see how it works. I'm all about testing, because you make big decisions and then do all this stuff and then it doesn't turn out.
And then it doesn't work, right?
Yeah. So that's ultimately what I'm going to recommend to start. It's so relatively easy. Who we'd have do it, that was part of your question. I'm not 100% sure. Burlington Communications has done most of the work on both those towers, so that's probably a likely partner for us to use, but I don't know that for a fact.
Okay, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but just looking through that report, I see in a couple of different scenarios, the consultant had recommended a new tower site location to be determined, but somewhere on the north side of town. But did I miss something, or he didn't actually make any recommendations of where, right?
Yeah, it's probably in the Curtis Road area. I don't know if he came out and said that, but that's there's a map that indicates it to be in the Curtis Road area.
Okay, so
that's where we played with the different locations, and he ran the test, or the program that he can use.
And so there's no existing towers up there that we would be able to just rent space on?
No, we looked at, he showed some towers that were not anywhere near that elevation, but that were on that side of town, and that was old data, because when we actually started looking for them, and there are no towers over on this end of town. So that what really is amazing about that is that when you run that program with a tower over there, what it does to the map was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah. But what I'll be coming with, and what you'll see in that is there's different options, and that's one of the options, and none of them have to be done necessarily at the same time, so it can be a phased-in approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have questions for the chief? Looks like you get a pass.
Wow, do we do this every time?
Maybe. So I want to step away and go grab Chris for planning and zoning and let us know when he's ready.
All right, he's eating, so he's going to be a minute. He might have just cracked a beer too. No,
I got a question. Did you inspire Paul, or was it vice versa?
to sit in the recliner.
Yeah.
I think he was in it before I was, so I snuck a peek and I saw him all comfortable. I'm like,
Dang, that's a good idea.
mine doesn't rock like his though. So planning and zoning, been fairly quiet in the permitting business. This is the time of year. So January, February, March we don't expect a lot of permits coming in. Typically right now would be the time of year. We're not really seeing that yet, and I think probably for obvious reasons. I'm going to be putting the word out there, Front Porch Forum and anywhere else that I can, that my biggest fear is that people are going to wait, and then they're going to all come at once. So we're up and running, so there's absolutely no reason why we can't. We are processing permits, just not a lot of them. So I want to get that word out there that if people are thinking about a project, please submit your permits now. So if you hear of anybody, and maybe we can add that to the announcements too. I'll talk to Elaine about that. But during that 3-month period, we processed 14 permits, $790 in fees. We didn't permit any houses. I did permit one commercial building. That's the building, maybe you've seen it, at L&D line striping over on Route 14. And the total values of all the permits, most of it was that building, is $503,000 added potential to the grant list, maybe. Development Review Board met twice. They didn't have a meeting in February. They approved a 2-lot subdivision, and that was up on Airport Road. Mark Booth, they used to be Gordon Booth Living Trust. That's off Airport Road and Upper Prospect Street, that big field right there. There's 200 and some acres, a lot of open land and wooded area. So they subdivided that field off essentially, and then development rights have been sold to the land trust for that. And Mark Booth retained the woods for the most part. And as I said, they also approved a variance. Although we're not talking about April, I just wanted to mention we did conduct the DRB meeting last Wednesday by video conference. It went exceedingly well. I was surprised that, especially that was some of the members' first time ever doing anything like this. So, and we had applicants on the video, so it went really well. Planning Commission, pretty much what they've done this year is work on the town plan. They concentrated January and February and the early part of March, making final edits, and then ultimately held a public hearing on March 25th. And after that public hearing, they voted to send that to you folks. So I will be turning that into Carl probably later this week. After they made the final approvals, there were a few changes to be made. Cindy, my assistant, worked on that most of last week. She's done a very good job at that. She really likes editing and she really likes formatting, and she's been a godsend when it came to that, because I get frustrated pretty quick with some of that stuff. So she's done very well. And beyond that, COVID for us. I'm assuming you know, but a lot of us are working from home. We're kind of keeping the back part of the building. So planning, zoning, and engineering and assessing. We keep one person in the office all the time. So I'm in there generally on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and maybe on Thursday some. Cindy's in on Wednesday because she also does AP, and that's when AP has to be done. And Jocelyn in the assessor's office is there on Thursdays, and Josh is in and out, working from home, and he has to come in some too. So that's working very, very well. I'm a little surprised how well it's working between being able to, access our work computers, between the phone app that we're using that allows us to answer the phones, and it's not perfect by any means. And we have communications where we can instant message each other, and we're doing that constantly during the day. So it's working very well, actually. And that's all I have.
Thanks. Any questions for Chris?
I have one question. Chris, when you last presented to the select board in January, we had a conversation about the enforcement of ordinances, particularly the junk vehicle ordinances. And I suspect not a lot of work's been done on that, given what we've been facing here most recently. But do you have anything to report on that? Because
I have a list that I plan to work with. Part of the problem is that these things can get fairly heated, and plus I need to do some site visits with that. And I'm kind of waiting for this COVID thing to settle down, then I'm going to send out some letters. I also, as part of that, also inform them about bulk trash, because sometimes they can get rid of some of that stuff, bulk trash, and of course that's been put off. So I have the list of people that I'm going to contact, but I have not contacted them yet.
And going once.
I'll just say what I did to Josh, which is thank you, and appreciate your efforts on both sides, both your hats, and in keeping the residents and your staff safe and healthy.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
And with that there, we're done with number 7 on our agenda. We'll be moving on to number 8, which is considering adopting the sewage allocation policy for 2020. As we heard earlier this evening, this is something near and dear to Josh's heart that he's been working on. So Josh, welcome back.
Yes. So Harry started it and I kind of just finished it up. There are some things that we needed to put in for numbers as far as the resident type, commercial utility type stuff, and then come up with the last numbers of the flows to September. So probably 70% was done and I wrapped it up.
Excellent. Anything special or significant you'd like to point out that you had to look over or work on?
Not that I can think of.
Good enough. Board members, any questions on this?
I have one or two, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please, Mr. Mitchell.
Josh, have you had any contact with the city in regards to some of our flumes and the measuring and all that stuff? I understand that I guess there's some discrepancies or something going on a little bit. Have you made an effort, or has the city talked to you?
Yeah, so for the last quarter, some of our flumes were high, and we weren't quite sure what was going on. So I actually had Champlin and Associates come out and take a look at one of the flume meters. And what actually happened is a big chunk of stuff got stuck in the flume, and it was reading a lot higher than it was really going through it. So we removed it, and I've talked with the city, and I haven't seen this quarter's yet back, but I tried to. So what happened is in February 27th is when we found the problem, and so I tried to use the average from that date till the 1st of April as an average for that whole quarter, or for the quarter before the 27th. I figured that was a fair assumption to use, because of all the runoff from snow melt and rain, that, you know, the infiltration would be a little bit higher during those months. And so figuring using that average was a good or a fair way to do it.
Right, so, also, I know there's, and I don't know how the COVID-19 is gonna, you know, affect this, but I also know that there's gonna be some upgrades, down the road for the city sewer plant. Have you had any preliminary discussions with the city in regards to that?
I have not. So every week I have a call with the city of Barre and Montpelier and now Berlin as far as a like COVID mutual aid type call. And I know that they've been talking about how all of their projects basically have been shut down due to COVID. Their contractors aren't allowed to work. So if they've started it, it's on hold. And if they haven't started it, it's on hold even longer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Jack. Other questions for Josh on this policy?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 sewage allocation policy, Mr. Chair.
Second?
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And I didn't happen to notice in the slew of emails that came out in the afternoon, but it says we have to sign this too. I figure this is probably one of those documents we'd see.
Yes, that is sitting in your inboxes now.
Thank you much. Josh, you've been doing such a fantastic job. I think we'll keep you here for item number 9, considering approving the Class 2 road paving grant applications.
So this is a grant that we put in every year, I'm told. So this year is, I looked at Graniteville Road, Quarry Hill Road, so Forest Road, that stretch through there. That road is breaking up pretty bad and probably one of the worst roads we have in the town right now. It's also the major truck route for Rock of Ages and Northeast Materials and people going to the industrial park. So it's highly truck traffic. And so I thought this would be a good road to put forth in front of V-Trans to try and get some money towards it. The paving and milling is fairly high for this. So hopefully we can get it. It'd be a good thing to get.
And I do see in our notes right here that there is a suggestion that with the application, we submit a cover letter stating we would accept a partial grant.
Yep, we can do that. I talked to the district project manager, and she said they don't normally do that, but it doesn't hurt to ask for it.
Okay. Board members, any questions on this one?
I'll make a motion that we approve submitting a Class 2 road paving grant application for Graniteville Road and Quarry Hill Road. And I will include the cover letter piece in my motion.
Second?
And any discussion?
I have a quick question for Carl. How much do we typically receive from this grant per year?
A common amount would be around $75,000. There was one year we received a grant for quite a bit more, over $100,000. I'm not sure what happened that year. If other towns just didn't have applications, so they had more money to hand out. But typically, it's between 60,000 and 80,000, or 60 and 90,000.
So that's the justification for asking, or the willingness to receive a partial grant?
Correct. The 188 is very high. I know with the structures grants, there's a cap of 175,000. I'm not sure if they have that for the paving, because it's just not something that has come up. But with other grant programs, they like to know if we would accept less. It just gives the agency awarding the grants a way to spread the money out among more applications.
Thank you.
All right. So those are the questions. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So that moves us on to our next item on the agenda, which is considering adopting town road and bridge standards. If you hold on a moment, Josh, would you come on down?
Yeah, so this kind of goes along with the grant, town highway bridge standards. I believe you guys adopted it in July, and then now they made some changes, not real major ones, and make sure that we're just going to comply with them.
So we've adopted them. Now we just have to have a certificate of compliance saying that we'll go by those standards.
Right.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I will make a motion that we vote to approve the certification of, let me try that again. Certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody not?
Stop laughing at me, Mr. Chair.
I just think it's awesome that we adopt it. Now we got to sign a certification saying that, yes, we will follow what we adopted.
And signature page is also in your inboxes.
Thank you. All right. Josh,
Can I
don't think
ask
you
a quick
Yes.
question, Tom? I'm sorry. So that's 3 documents we have to sign plus the warrants, Elaine?
I think it's 2 and the warrant, and
Okay.
2 and the 2 warrants. Because
Okay.
the grant application you do not need to sign.
Okay. And in where we aren't there, but when I recuse myself, obviously I just not sign it. Obviously, do I have to verbally do that again in not signing it? The warrant.
When you get to the warrant item on the agenda, you could have this board could either do it in 1 or 2 motions. If they do it in 1 motion, then you would just recuse yourself and not sign the warrant.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Josh, thanks very much. Feel free to hang out for the rest of the evening. It's a bang up good time.
Thanks.
All right. So number 11 on our agenda is public hearing for the proposed town charter amendments. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. Welcome to the public hearing. Now, Carol, this is regarded to all the changes we've been talking about. Your note said in here that we may need to have another hearing in May because of the timeframes.
Yes, I have not checked into that yet, or asked Mike Monty to do it. I'm just thinking that these hearings, there was some requirement for the timing in relation to the election. And now that the election's been postponed, I'm wondering if we will have to redo at least 1 or if not 2 more hearings in mid to late May.
Okay. I just wonder if you have any update on that.
I'm sorry, I don't have an update on it yet. I'll be talking to Mike later on.
That's fine. We're new charters, and besides, these are great ideas anyway, so it's not going to hurt for us to have it sit out there a little bit longer. These are all the article changes that we have out there for the charter changes. They're going to be changing some of the wording on it, splitting up the clerk and treasurer's office. And since nothing's easy, we have to break it out into multiple sections. Anybody like to expand upon these areas or have any other comments since it is a public hearing?
Mr. Chair, if we could have the town clerk speak to the vision of the clerk treasurer position, I think that would be valuable for the public to hear yet again. That's the most significant change that we're proposing here. There you go, Donna.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm trying to do 4 things here at once, as usual. I'm doing things from home as a test just to prepare for the Board of Abatement meeting at the end of the month, so I can advise people on the other side and have some clue as to what's going on. But speaking to the charter change with this proposed splitting of the clerk treasurer position, this is something that is very long overdue. Unfortunately, Barrytown is no longer a small community, and having one person trying to fulfill all the obligations of a treasurer and a clerk are just not possible anymore. So it is time, and with my retirement, it seemed like perfect timing to go ahead and do this. So I do support this particular split with having an elected clerk and appointed treasurer.
Thank you, Donna. All right. If there's no other feedback or input, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Move we close the public hearing.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right. That moves us over to 12, considering approving special event permit for Thunder Road, and also 12A, which is the service agreement.
Okay,
Miss-
so
Go ahead, Carl.
the police chief and I met with the Thunder Road manager, either late February or early March, and talked about a few things. Bill Dodge asked about reducing the number of officers there, and Chris Machad and Bill talked that over, and they came to an understanding that most times we would just need 3 police officers there, and Thunder Road would be staffing the gates, or they're checking for the amount of alcohol somebody has, or if they have glass containers. So that led to the change in the police service agreement, stating there would be 3 officers at most times, and that also caused a pretty good increase in the hourly rate, because the police chief will usually be one of those 3 officers, and so now there would just be 2 other officers to sort of dilute the higher rate that the chief gets paid, instead of, say, 4 or 5 other officers. Still, the Thunder Road will be saving money by the reduction in officers there. It mentioned to the road about having their fireworks contractor apply for the permit earlier than they have done in the past, so that it's not a last-minute deal where they are not applying in less than the required 15 days before the event. There is no car show downtown. Well, there was not one planned at that time, and there wouldn't be allowed now as it stands. So there is no need for the parade of cars up Quarry Hill Road that we've dealt with in the past until last year. So the police chief has provided a notice of compliance. The fire chief has provided that after he saw that Thunder Road had their contract with Highway Safety Services signed. Thunder Road's paid their $800 permit fee. They provided their certificate of insurance, and they've signed the police services agreement. And they know they cannot race when the governor's executive order on gatherings is in place. So they are not planning to race on May 3rd, and I'm told that they released something now that have acknowledged that the May 3rd race cannot be held. The next race, which would be on May 24th, is still a possibility. If the governor does rescind the executive order after May 15th, then Thunder Road would plan to race on May 24th. So everything is in order as usual, and the permit, as you can see from what was in your packet, has been noted that they are not allowed to race when the executive order is in force. Any questions?
I have a couple. Have we, on the Barrytown fire, Chris has a number 1 regarding camping, and it says assuming compliance with number 1 below. I'm just curious, have there been issues with this in the past, the recent past?
There was in 2018. I guess it must have been 2018 because it was 2019 that Chris first made note of that, and we included a note in there about keeping a fire lane through where the campers are parked. And Thunder Road has addressed that, and that's been acknowledged. So the note is there just to maintain that fire lane now.
Thank you. And I guess the only other thing is, as I look through the agreement, maybe we should have a place at the end of the agreement where the signing is, where they can print their name, because reading what looks like Dory's name is not an issue, but I have no idea who signed for Thunder Road. It looks like an Etch-a-Sketch. So I'm just wondering if we might have a place underneath where they can print their name as well.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Anything else, Bob?
Not for me, sir.
Thanks. Other board members?
I have a couple of questions. Mr. Nelson mentioned the camping thing. Aside from keeping a lane open for emergency vehicles, is there anything, I mean, do they need some kind of a permit to allow camping? Since they're not a campground, they don't have sanitary hookups, or is that I guess that would have been a question while Chris was still on the line, maybe.
Well, the question of whether they need to have a permit, I don't recall coming up before, but it is very temporary camping, so it might just be one night that they're there with the Labor Day weekend or the Milk Bowl weekend. There might be a couple of nights that campers stay there. I would assume that the type of campers that are going in there have capacity to hold their wastewater for that long.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, I hadn't really thought about it before until Bob mentioned that thing about camping. And then my second question, the motion, the suggested motion in our packet references an 18 race season, but looking at the list, even if you remove the May 3rd race, unless I'm counting wrong, it still looks like more than 18 events. I'm wondering, do we need to specify that it's for an 18 race season?
I went through and counted the races. So there's more dates than that, more dates than 18 on the list, because the car show is still on this list, which and then the May 2nd practice is on the list. And then there are some, like the Milk Bowl is 3 dates, but I counted that as one event.
Oh, okay. That would explain it. And if they, I mean, if they were to decide to try to reschedule the May 3rd race, I just don't want to limit them. If it turns out that they are going to do 19 or 20 races, I don't want to limit them by specifying an 18 race season if we don't have to.
Well, you would change it to special event permit the Thunder Road for the 2020 race season.
It seems like that's what we did in years past, if I remember right.
How does that affect our police agreement? Does that specify number of races? Sorry, I just put my orange peel on top of it.
The police services agreement references the schedule, which is attached. I'm trying to find, here it is, it's in, I'll call it Article 1, Services Provided, Paragraph 1. The PD shall provide 3 sworn officers for each event shown on the 2020 Thunder Road Police Schedule, attachment number 1.
All right. And then at the very end, it says under Article 7, this contract is for the 2020 racing season. A schedule of 18 race events was provided to the town in March and is attached to this contract.
All right, so I don't think anybody, like the police department, is going to have any heartburn over if for some reason they decide to schedule an extra, and let's say they schedule something as a fundraiser. So then they end up having 19 events. I don't think the police department's going to object there. From
Okay.
Special event permit point, perhaps changing your motion to Thunder Road for the 2020 race season might be better to capture if there is some kind of an extra car race event.
Yeah, I think that's a good change to the motion. Just to keep us in there. Yes, Jack?
I guess I'm not quite as comfortable with that as the rest. You know, John Q. Citizen has been used to a set race schedule, and they know when they hear the noise, and they know that's Center Road, but it's not going to go on and on. I'm not too comfortable with just setting an open end for them to decide that they want 22 races instead of 18. So I'm not going to support an open-ended race schedule.
I understand your concern, Jack. I think what we're trying to do with the motion here is just approve the special events permit. And inside that special events permit is what lists out all the races. But because of their delayed start, there's some of the races that are going to go by. But according to that special events permit, it's approved that schedule. And I think the concern was if we said 18 and they decided they wanted to, like, for example, reschedule their May 3rd race at a later date.
Right, they do that with rainouts
That
anyway.
it was included in the special events.
But I just don't want it, I don't want them to feel that, because we're in a little different scenario this year, that they can just decide to schedule another race that goes into you know, October or whatever.
Right, yeah, with the motion, the way Paul had suggested it and with Carl's input, was if we approve the event permit for the 2020 season, that special event permit, or excuse me, the town and police service agreement dictates the schedule that was provided and the number of races, which if they do make up races would be more than the 18, which was referenced in the original motion. But it's not more than what they had listed on the schedule for the police service agreement.
I mean, I don't mind setting a number, and if they need to run a number of race to come back and ask, but I just don't want it open-ended. They can do whatever they want. The rain date has never been a problem, but this year things are different. They might want to run into later in the season depending on what's going on. I don't think they should be able to just do that on their own.
They wouldn't be able to because something else underneath the special events permit number 20-001, third paragraph down, says a permit is further subject to the right of the select board of the town of Barre to revoke said permit upon the select board being satisfied that such events are disturbing the peace and or in violation. And then it goes on, any other conditions of this permit.
Right,
So,
but are you saying that if they do 22 races, we can revoke 2 of them or something?
if they're in violations of any conditions of this permit, yes.
All right.
But Carl, I did have one question. Last year they had a couple races that ran pretty late for either being big accidents or weather. And a couple different residents had commented about how late they'd gone in the evening. When you guys had visited with the track owners, was anything mentioned about that to them?
I think that we brought up the lateness regarding the fireworks. Just checking my notes quickly. I don't have any notes about the late of the races. I do remember there was a comment made about the fireworks being late, and that same comment being made that you just mentioned about just a bad night with the number of accidents holding up the racing. But nothing more has been said to them about how late that they are running.
Yeah, I just know when I heard from some residents, they understand it's T-Road, it's racing, it's local, but there were some nights they were pushing it pretty late, and not everybody had Friday off, so some residents were upset about that. So if we communicate back with them, just remind them to be cautious of that.
Okay.
Please and thank you. Board members, any other comments or discussions on this, or would we like to make some motions?
Could I just ask a quick question? The police chief's notice of compliance provides for a race season for a period beginning April 15th through October 31st, but the permit states May 2nd through October 31st. Is that an issue if we have different dates?
Well, the police chiefs just expands it a little bit. I don't know why they felt the need to have it start on April 15, but I could see why they might have it stated to go to October 31, because there was one year the Milk Bowl got rained out, I believe, 2 times. So the originally scheduled weekend, the first makeup weekend, and then finally was held middle to later in October. I don't see any problem with that being broader than what is on the special event permit.
Didn't know if they needed to be aligned with each other, but it seems like a non-issue at this point. So the permit also makes reference to the security and control plan, and that's referenced in the police services agreement. So these two documents work. There's some reciprocity between the two documents, if I'm reading this correctly.
Correct. The police services agreement, AKA the security agreement, has been the major document, major point of contention or negotiation and discussion in the past. And once that's worked out and the fire department gets its confirmation of the fire and rescue services, then the notices of compliance can be signed and submitted in to you.
So the permit and the agreement are connected. The agreement, the police services agreement, makes mention of a schedule of 18 race events. So that's sort of baked into this agreement. So to Jack's concern, which I share, that I don't want this open-ended, you've given us the schedule, but we're going to add however many on. They have signed on to something that specifies 18 events. So I think, Jack, if we agree to both of these in the format that they've been presented, we have an assurance that they're likely to stay within that number of events. Now, the things may be rescheduled for rain dates, and that's why the last event that's noted in their schedule is October 4th, but we may be listening to races through October 31st by virtue of the timeline that we've allowed them. Am I reading that right, Carl?
Yes, you're right that there is detail in here, reference the schedule that they provided, which shows 18 events. So by that agreement, they're getting a permit for an 18 event season. So if they're rescheduling, like the May 3rd race, they're not increasing the number of events, rescheduling. But if they want to add an extra race for whatever reason, I mentioned one reason before, that if they were to do a fundraiser, or for, let's say that the ACT tour has to move an event from some other racetrack to Thunder Road, that would be an additional event, and that could be considered that they would have to come in and get a special event permit for that one additional race.
So if we make a motion that just for the 2020 race season, we still have the assurance by virtue of approving the police service agreement that we are approving an 18 event race season.
Well, I think so, through the police services agreement, yes.
So I would move that we authorize the town clerk treasurer to issue a special event permit to Thunder Road for the 2020 race season.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Jack.
It sounds like maybe Mrs. Malone's thing will take care of what I was concerned about, but in the bigger picture, I have bigger concerns, I guess, with the COVID-19, and I know the permit says that nothing will change unless the governor changes his emergency order. But I've been thinking about this for quite a while, and watching the news and reading the newspapers, I think we'd be sending a very bad message that if we authorize Thunder Road to run at this early date. As all of you know, the world has canceled and postponed pretty much every sport event there is. And this, to me, just does not seem like a priority. I don't know where we would end up if we open it up and you get 1,000 or 2,000 people there and somebody gets sick and it transfers to all parts of the state. I don't know if I want to deal with it. I don't know if I want to be responsible for that. So the governor, as you all know, you've been watching the news, the governor is talking about a quarter turn on the spigot. I think this is a much bigger than a quarter turn on the spigot. We don't know what's going to happen after May 15th, neither do Thunder Road. There's a lot of sports organizations that want to get on the road, want to get back in business. I'm just not comfortable. I think it's the wrong message, and I was reading this article today in the newspaper. Is lawn mowing an essential business in Vermont? A lot of small businesses, as you know, there's a lot of contractors out there. And according to the agency's guidance and the governor's order, no. Now, you can't hire somebody to go rake your lawn or go mow your lawn under the present guidance. And I think that's a lot of small businesses, a lot of 1 or 2, 3, 4 operations. And right now, if you interpret the order as saying no, you can't be out there. So I guess I would rather see that somebody can come mow my lawn rather than go and see cars go around an oval for half a night. So I appreciate Mrs. Malone's comments to try to, take care of the racing schedule, but in the bigger picture, I think it's wrong to issue this permit at this time, and I will be voting no.
Fair enough, Jack. I just want to point out for the people that don't have a copy of the special events and permits in front of them, specifically been added to this one is this permit is further conditioned and shall not become effective until the owner or operator, oh, that's not the wrong one. There's one in here we had that had to wait till the governor.
Right above that, Tom.
There we go.
Right, I know it's in there.
Yeah, raise or host any gathering of people that is not compliant with the governor's executive order and any addendums to it. So we're just signing this stuff off now, but it's not valid until the governor lists his executive orders, Jack. So we're not telling anybody to go out and not adhere to the social distancing, the self-isolation. We're just getting this taken care of. So when that does get lifted, they can adhere to the new standards and proceed ahead of time. We're not telling anybody to ignore what's out there and to proceed with it anyways.
I understand that it's all laying on the governor, but as far as the town of Barre, I just don't think it's a good example to be setting that we're approving something that we know really shouldn't, in my mind, we shouldn't be concerned with at this point. And depending on what the governor does, I mean, whether it's a quarter turn or a half a turn or the full turn, I think this should be taken up then, once we know what's going to happen on the state.
Duly noted.
So let me ask the question in terms of what this group of people need for lead time in order to have an event, and is part of the rationale of securing this so that they can line up the business. I can't imagine that these events are something that you can just decide, okay, Saturday we're going to have a race and we're just going to get that up and running. My sense on this is that they're trying to get their ducks in order if they can have the races. They can always cancel things, but trying to plan something of this magnitude on short notice is probably near impossible. And I'm sure they're well aware that this may be a non-season, like many other, as you pointed out, Jack, sports events, that they're just going to cancel the season. Because I think that these are going to be the events that are the very last ones that are determined to be essential at some point in time. I think that those that have the largest gatherings of people are going to be the very last ones that come out of that turn of the spigot. But I do have a certain concern in terms of what the folks who own this business and who schedule these events, the amount of time, effort, and work that has to go in, and the length of time it takes to get these events up and running. So, you know, I'm not intimately involved in this. I don't know the details. I just know if you've ever planned events, even of a much smaller magnitude, it takes time, and maybe that's part of their thinking of, if I can at least get these permits secured, if we have a season, then we will be ready to go.
One other point to consider, the state is allowing hotels and the like to start making reservations, but only reservations for people who are going to use the hotel room or other accommodation after June 15th. This is sort of the same way, that you're getting the permit here so that the next step for Thunder Road will be to take this permit and go to the state to get their state racing permit. That permit is a 2-year permit, and this is the year that they have to renew it. But they're just trying to, as somebody said, get their ducks in a row so that if and when the addendum or the executive order is lifted for events of their size, they are ready to go and not then have to start coming to the town of Barre and get their permit, and then from there go to the state to get their.
So the other thing that I would toss out there is that there are virtual events occurring, and I have heard talk of the virtual racing. They will have the race, but there will be no live bodies, but they'll tape it and people can watch it. So, you know, that may be something that they're contemplating at this point, because I've heard that the folks in the NASCAR circuit are considering something of that nature. We'll prevent the crowds from gathering, but we can still have the event that they can watch, much as we're watching each other now.
Right. Major League Baseball is talking about doing the same thing.
All right. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed.
No,
And next up on the agenda is 12A, the service agreement approval.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to be a stickler, but I think under the Secretary of State's rules, because we're teleconferencing, when there's a vote that's not unanimous, we're supposed to do a roll call.
Oh, my apologies. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye and your name. Is that how you want to do it, or just list Jack as the one that voted no and the rest of the select board? Tom, Norma, Bob, and Paul voted yes. Does that satisfy it?
by me, Mr. Chair.
Correct.
Mr. White is okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Paul, thanks for the clarification. Want to make sure we're within compliance. Thanks, Paul. All right. So the second part of that, as Norma had pointed out, was the Town of Barre Police Service Agreement needing to be signed by the town manager and a duly authorized agent for the Barre Town Select Board.
Make a motion that we empower the town manager to sign on behalf of the select board
Second.
and the town.
Just got a question. It says town manager and duly authorized agent. So would that be two people, or could we have the same person?
I think it means the town manager is the duly authorized agent.
He
That's
is
the way I interpret it.
he is both the town manager and the duly authorized agent for the select board. one person.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry,
Oh.
Jack, sorry, Jack.
Mr. Chair, I'm afraid I'm going to be in the negative here as well. I looked that over and, I don't know if Mr. Paul White has any concerns on this or not, but I know I'm not the police chief and, I don't have his background to be police chief, but I was a grunt on the ground for a number of years in police work. And, I'm just concerned of why we, especially at Thunder Road, why we agreed to go down to 3 officers, whether you're checking coolers or whether you're walking the crowd. And they've made a number of improvements there with different sections opened up now, and they've had a pretty good crowd there. And I just feel, I don't have the magic number, but I just feel 3 police officers for the amount of crowd that goes there is not enough. And I know the crowds are a little different than in my day when I was there on a regular basis. But this day and age today too, there is certain people that still want to violate the rules, and I think to ask the chief, there's going to be 1 and 2 others, and they're probably all full-time, to handle a situation. I think there's going to be some potential there for some issues. So I'm not happy with just the 3 police officers, but if you want to vote in the majority, I will be the no vote on that as well.
Thank you, Jack. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean, I share Mr. Mitchell's concern. However, my understanding is that change was made as much at the police chief's request as it was at Thunder Road's request. Carl can correct me if I'm wrong. And, if this agreement has been approved by the police chief. And while I might be more comfortable with more police officers there, as Mr. Mitchell is, it's ultimately Chief Dodge's decision.
That's what I say. I'm not the police chief,
Right.
but from the grunt's perspective, I would take a different view.
Right.
Any other comments? If not, let's go around the room. All those in favor say aye.
This is Norma.
Aye. Bob?
Paul, aye.
I think I heard a Norma with an I in there and a Tom with an I. And those voting no?
Jack is no.
Thanks, Jack. And those carry us into, if there's nothing else for that topic, to 13, report on coronavirus.
Okay. So, overall workforce is still good. And you heard from Chris Violet about working from home, in all the departments here in the building that are doing that. It seems to be working out all right. Today we talked about supplies a little bit. Generally, the supplies for the departments are good. We did talk today about hand sanitizer. Chris Lamonda had found a distillery here in Vermont that is offering hand sanitizer, and Chris Violet was aware of another one that had hand sanitizer that they were giving a gallon to emergency services. He's going to follow up on that to see if that means Barrytown's 3 departments could each get a gallon, or if it would be 1 gallon for the town. But they're probably going to use both outlets to secure more hand sanitizer so that we can make it available to every employee and in many different locations. Masks were talked about today. Josh Martineau mentioned about am getting a mask for Public Works, so that will be several masks for each employee. And then the police chief learned of another source for cloth masks, and so we're checking into that for the other departments here at the town. In case this goes on for quite some time, or in case we're told that we have to be wearing them all the time. Regarding events, the May 16th 5K that would have been held on the town bike path has been postponed, and a date has not been set for makeup. And Donna, would you want to talk about the election?
Okay, Carl, I'm sorry, but you broke up. What did you want me to talk to?
I was asking if you wanted to tell the select board a little bit about the election news that you reported today.
The Secretary of State office is looking to consider a vote by mail for both the August and November votes. Needless to say, nothing like this has ever been done in Vermont before. And Barre Town is looking to also hold their annual election on June 2nd, Australian ballot. So we were contemplating being sort of a, for lack of a better word, a pilot program for administering this type of election. I have been in contact with their office since about mid-March, working on some of the various aspects of an election and how do we ensure John Q. Public of its integrity, while at the same time not having a physical polling place. Things are still sketchy at this time, but they are progressing. I do know that on your next week's agenda, we will be discussing the election and the warning. And at that point in time, the board will need to decide if we want to proceed with a vote by mail election. If you concur that we want to go this route, then that's where the work begins. And I will be in close contact, and the Secretary of State's office is expecting that you, the board, will probably agree to this. So things are in flux. Everybody stay tuned. As soon as we have information and processes on how things will take place, I will keep you informed.
Thank you.
Exciting times.
Regarding EMS, there are a couple of items to report there. Last week, we were contacted by the state about interest in performing transports to move people or patients from one facility to another to sort of segregate maybe people who don't have the virus, but they want to get them to someplace safer. And they sent a 25-page document which included the grant conditions that we see with state grants, about, like I said, many, many pages of requirements that we would have to comply with. And we had some concern about having to be subject to those conditions for performing work for the state. And as it turns out, the Vermont Ambulance Association also had some concerns about it. So the VAA is working on that with the state now to come up with something a bit more. The state has also asked about EMS services helping with COVID testing. And Chris Lamonda reports that there's going to be a meeting held tomorrow, which he would be participating in, or that maybe some of our providers would be helping the state work at testing sites. And yesterday we learned that the stimulus package number 3 includes money for ambulance services. So as I understand it, we would be getting money from the state based upon the amount of Medicare receipts we received last year. And Chris Violet's estimating that amount to be between $35,000 and $40,000. The big news is this afternoon around 4:30 or so, we received the situation report from the state, and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development has issued some more interpretation of the stay-at-home orders, and it involves road crews. And the new language added states road crews should only be doing repairs to roadway infrastructure necessary to ensure the imminent safety of motorists. Repairs such as big potholes or failing culverts are allowed under the executive order. However, other normal time maintenance, street sweeping, litter pick, ditching, etc., are not allowed under the executive order. All town highway crews must maintain proper social distancing measures and follow DDH and CDC guidance on COVID-19 at all times. All other local town highway operations must wait until the state of emergency has been lifted. So, Josh and Jay and I are going to have to meet tomorrow morning to reevaluate what we're going to do with the Department of Public Works. This does not mean that the department has to stop working, because there's another section in the ACCD guidelines labeled energy and utilities, and under that there is utility work that can be done, including maintenance. So one of the tasks that we were planning to do, which is a normal thing this time of year, is doing sewer flushing. So that appears to be able to go ahead as we had planned. We also have talked about using our water valve exerciser. So it's a device that we own that manually, I'm sorry, not manually, but it's electronic powered to exercise the gate valves on our water system. And that's something that needs to be done. So it would be worthwhile and useful to put a guy or two out doing that work. But whether or not we have enough water and sewer work keep everybody busy, I'm not sure of that at this time. It should be noted that the shop can continue to work because they would be needed to take care of the vehicles for police, fire, and ambulance. Just yesterday, I spoke with Dwight Coffrin, and we decided to delay the start time for him and his crew. So instead of starting next Monday, they were going to start on April 27th. Now we'll have to reassess that also. Regarding expenses, I would say that they're still minimal, maybe between $1,000 and $1,500 so far for various items, included even the special ad that Chris Violet put in the paper regarding the DRB meeting. There was a webinar teleconference today by VEM. There's another one on Thursday, and that teleconference is about the FEMA assistance. So because of the select board meeting tonight, I passed on the one this afternoon, and I'll sit in on the one on Thursday afternoon. You may be hearing about municipalities saying that they're forecasting a shortfall in revenue. Just want to remind you that the town highway fund, over 90% of the revenue comes from property tax. And in the general fund, over 80% of the revenue comes from the property tax. Barrytown has no other taxes, so there's no rooms and meals or sales tax that would be taking a big hit when businesses are slower than usual. We've had no tax collections during this time, so we have nothing to judge about how tax collections are going to go yet. During the 08 and 09 Great Recession, there was some increase in the delinquency rate, but that was short-lived. And the stimulus packages that are coming out for this pandemic are much greater than what we saw help ease the Great Recession of 08. Regarding the tax collections, also just note that a few weeks ago I signed the warrant for the February 15th delinquent taxes, and the amount was $63,000. So that's about 1.5% of the amount that would have been due. That's pretty low, and as you may have heard me say before, 20 plus years ago, I would sign warrants for $75,000, and that's when we were collecting a lot less taxes than we are right now. So I was making any forecast projections about what's going to happen to the budget. I think it's early to start doing that.
So,
go ahead, Chuck.
on the cemetery, guys, they were getting unemployment, right?
Yes, they were.
So are they going to be able to piggyback onto the new thing, do you know, or are they just going to continue to get their unemployment as it was started?
I don't know.
By the Vermont labor laws, they should be able to get both.
Yes. It's my understanding as well. I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Carl, in regards to masks, I see on social media that there are people making masks all the time, and I'm happy to post that the town is looking for masks. If you can give me an idea how many we might need.
Yeah, I know a couple people that are doing that as well that I'm sure would be happy to do it.
Yeah, that's what the staff was talking about this afternoon, that when the police chief said that he's found another source about how many more we might need after Public Works gets theirs provided by the Graniteville resident.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll follow up with the staff and see if their needs are getting addressed by this outlet that the police chief found, and if it's not enough, Bob, I'll get back to you.
Okay, because I'm happy to put the word out. And we just want to make, I'm assuming that everybody knows that if you're wearing the cloth mask, that you need to sanitize it each day. So if they're doing the cloth mask, then they probably should have 2 or 3 so they can rotate them.
Correct, that's what we're thinking for, like with Public Works, making sure they have more than one.
My other question is in regards to our summer workers who may or may not start on time. Typically, they have some bonus for meeting a certain number of days, certain number of weeks, certain amount of time. I'm wondering if we're just going to be a little bit more lenient in what that looks like, whether we use it as a percentage of whatever time they end up working or something similar.
summer help bonus policy is set up that they get a bonus of different levels based on how many days of work they missed during the time that they're with us. So if we can't use their services until, say, the May 18th, then that would not affect their ability to earn the bonus. It just would shorten the number of hours that they work for us and therefore reduce the amount of bonus money that they receive, because the bonus is based on how many hours they actually worked the entire summer. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if, we might be able to be a little bit more lenient, just because they're not going to be able to work as many hours because they can't. But that, we certainly don't need to decide that tonight. It just was one of the things, as you were discussing, putting the summer help, putting them back a little bit, that it would need to be addressed maybe at some point. And my last piece is, you mentioned recreation, but I'm wondering if we would have staff on to be able to mow the cemeteries, because people can go, there as individuals, and walk or visit loved ones. So I don't know where that might fit into the governor's order, if that would be something that would not be allowed. As we heard earlier, people who mow lawns are not going to be allowed to do so. But at the same time, I don't think we want to let our cemeteries that we take great pride in, I don't think we want to let them just go either.
So as of last week, the Vermont Cemetery Association opinion appeared to be that cemetery work could begin. You just had to follow the social distancing and the requirements, and the requirement for no gatherings of more than 10 people. So even if somebody wanted to have a funeral and a burial, it's possible, but the family would have to abide by the no more than 10 people.
Okay.
And as of last week with that, the grass cutting was possible, and it was stated or recommended that there be no funerals on the Memorial Day weekend, so that people are not interfered with going into the cemetery. There's a lot more traffic into the cemeteries on Memorial Day weekend, and so
Yes.
not to have any funerals then to add to that amount. But with this news that came out late this afternoon, we need to check that again to see about the cemetery maintenance work, and if we can continue to cut the grass.
I know that Dwight and his crew have worked very hard to get rid of the grubs and to fertilize and everything else, and I'd hate to see it just go back to the jungle if we can avoid it, if it's possible. That's all. Thank you. That's all for me, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Any other board members with comments or questions? Paul?
Yeah, so following up on Bob's questions, people, private contractors are not allowed to mow lawns, but I wonder, does that extend to our municipal employees who maintain our recreation facilities? Would they be prohibited from doing that kind of work?
Yeah, that's what we have to check into more tomorrow. Until this afternoon, I was under the impression that we would be allowed to do that mowing. And Dwight and I talked about that he doesn't know how much workload there's gonna be for the rec crew at first, because there's not gonna be softball and baseball and soccer on the fields. So they wouldn't have the usual field maintenance kind of work to do every day to get ready for that evening's play. So, so we were gearing up for that mowing, but just to be sure, I guess tomorrow we're gonna have to check into whether grass cutting is allowed.
Right. And I guess if the contractors are prohibited, but it turns out that our town staff is allowed, would we be able to keep our people busy by having them do some of the neighborhood playgrounds or some of the other areas that we typically would contract out?
Yes, they would be quite busy if they tried to pick up the mowing at the 19 sites that we contract out. Some of them are pretty good size, like the EMS station and the Eastbury Fire Station, the Eastbury Park. Yeah, it would be tough for us to keep up with the grass with just our cemetery and recreation crew trying to do that.
And then hopefully it won't come to this, but I know you mentioned, various projects that could keep our DPW staff working. I know the state has negotiated with VSEA that certain state employees who are non-essential and unable to telework, either because they don't have the technology or because their jobs are just incompatible with telework. Some of them are being paid by the state to just simply stay home and do nothing without having to use any of their accrued leave. And I hope it doesn't come to that with any of our town staff, but I'm just wondering if that stimulus bill includes, any kind of reparations to the town if we ultimately have to go to that level of paying people to stay home and do nothing.
So I can speak to that. There's nothing available for municipalities at this time. There is some discussion about groups like the National League of Cities are trying to lobby for that, but there is nothing in the current bills that have been passed and signed into law.
Okay.
Anything else, Paul?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Norma, do you have anything? Jack?
This time.
No, sir.
Thank you. I just had a couple little ones before we jump off from this one. Elaine, thanks for the changes that you did to the website, the extra buttons and some more information there. It looks good on a computer and also from a mobile device, so thank you. Just wondering if we could still add the Barre Partnership. They have a web page that's set up specifically for the COVID-19 that's listing a bunch of the local businesses out. And if we could stick that up somewhere, I think that would be a great resource to have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I went looking for that last week. I had seen a version of it early on that I think Joel had put out, and then I went looking for it again last week, wondering if a certain business was open, and I couldn't find an updated version of it. So if we could link to that, that would be great.
Yeah, I like that. And then the other thing is, Bob had already mentioned this, but I just wanted to mention again about the cloth mask. We can really make sure that we're educating town employees when they get them, because there's evidence out there that if you're using a cloth mask and you don't take care of it properly and sanitize it, and that's more than just washing it, they actually recommend washing it and then taking an iron to it, that it's actually worse for you to be wearing that because it can correct a whole bunch of junk and then you just end up breathing it back and forth. So the cloth masks are a good idea, but I just really want to emphasize that we educate town staff that have them on how to take care of them so they're not, making themselves sicker. Even outside of this COVID-19, it could just be other things they're breathing. And then, I don't know if this is under COVID or roundtable, so I'll just bring it up now. We're doing the Zoom meetings. There's been a lot of problems going on with the Zoom security and the Zoom bombs. And my question was, do we have a plan on if we end up getting bombed during one of our meetings, someone jumps in unintentionally and tries to hijack the meeting? or if we have plans, if we have to go into executive session, what we might do to keep that confidential.
Yeah, so there's two strategies, and Paul did share some security measures that were shared out after the first moon bombing of the Senate, so appreciate that, Paul. So one strategy you're using now, which is that the select board has a dedicated meeting room now, which is not shared publicly. So as long as none of us share it out, nobody else should be able to ascertain what it is, and they would be very unlikely to be able to Zoom on. If they are, Zoom actually upgraded their interface. I can see right here, there's a security button on my screen right here. Right there. And it allows you to kick people off that join unexpectedly. So that's the second piece. That was everything.
Okay, thanks. I did see some articles out there as well, and I can form that to you as well in case you haven't seen it. It goes over like 10 or 12 different steps to take to also help manage the meeting. But it's just something we hadn't talked about.
I don't know that I see that. If you could send that, I'll look at it.
Yeah, I can get on that tomorrow. Well, if there's nothing else for the coronavirus update, I think you guys are doing an awesome job adapting to just about everything being new. So thank you guys. I mean, there's a lot of stress involved with trying to solve for a problem we haven't experienced before, adopting new processes, new technologies, new adaptations. And yeah, just give you props for that. So if we're good for 13, we'll move on to 14, which is considering approving the weekly accounts payable warrants for April 14th, 2020.
Make a motion
I move that.
to approve the weekly accounts payable warrants for April 14th, 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And anybody not voting because they're abstaining?
I'm recusing myself,
Or
Mr. Chair.
recusing, yeah.
Bob Nelson.
And Tom, Jack, Paul, and Norma all voted to pay bills. That carries us over to miscellaneous, including second-class liquor licenses. Looks like we have a few of them this time around.
Yeah, you have 3 on the agenda. I don't know if you want to take them one at a time or all in one motion, but the 3 second-class liquor licenses are from Lawson's Store, Quarry Hill Quick Stop, and Bevins 5 Family Enterprises, doing business as Gunner Brook Store and Deli.
Mr. Chair, we also have one for a tobacco license for Lawson's Store.
We don't approve the tobacco licenses. Those are done by the state. Sometimes the licensee or the applicant will attach it with not meaning to. So we just keep all the paperwork together and just forward it to the state once everything is approved.
I wondered why that was in there.
Yeah, because it's hard to believe the other 2 wouldn't also be selling cigarettes.
Right.
And every other licensee that we approve.
So it's a pleasure of the board, one at a time or all in a group?
Mr. Chair, I will move that we authorize second-class liquor licenses, plural, to Lawson's Store. I'm sorry, to Beverly Lawson doing business as Lawson's Store, to Scott and Cheryl McCarthy LLC doing business as Quarry Hill Quick Stop, and to Bevins 5 Family Enterprises doing business as Gunner Brook Store and Deli.
Second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? You'll pop by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that carries us right over into around the table. Donna, do you have anything for around the table?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Elaine?
Yes, just a reminder that I sent you all an email earlier this afternoon with a second Zoom link just for the thank you card. Editing is limited in Zoom, so this will keep things easier.
Thank you. Carl?
Nothing more tonight. Tom, thanks.
Thank you. Jack?
Nothing.
Norma?
I have two items. The first is, lest Carl think I forgot, because I haven't mentioned it in about 6 weeks, what's the status of the FY 18-19 audit?
I still have to answer some of the questions that they had about budget to actual for about 20 accounts. And then after that, I would have to write not write, but fill in the blanks in the management and discussion analysis. And I think that would wrap it up.
So the information that they were seeking for the Websterville Fire District assets, that work has been done?
That information was sent on to them, that the information that Robert Clark provided, and then they got back to me and said they also need something that Robert didn't know, and that is the dollar amount or some value for this big, the new 8-inch line that was put in. So I would have to get that information from Weston and Sampson, or try to find a contract amount and give that to them to use for setting a value of that 8-inch line. So I thought that had all been taken care of, but there was one piece of information left out.
My second item is just, I want to, excuse me, just, I have a frog in my throat. I want to thank Elaine for the work that she's done on taking care of all these electronic issues and setting up the Zoom access and DocuSign and all of these other things. I'm sure that there's plenty to keep her busy these days, and I just want to express my gratitude for going the extra mile to take care of these issues for us.
Mind if I jump on that? So I
Go
have
ahead.
to say, I've been really impressed with our staff, which is, as I've often praised them for their technophobia because it makes them less likely to click on malicious links, how well they've taken to the remoting in and working from home. They're very patient, they've learned it, they're working well with it. So thanks, Norma, but also want to point out that the staff in general has really been pitching in that way too.
Okay. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, I'll echo Norma and applaud and give appreciation for the extra work this has caused for all the staff and their adaptations to the multitude of changes. You know, I know trying to keep track of the changes in my own business with just a few employees is a massive undertaking. So I have some idea of what our manager and assistant manager and clerk and treasurer are going through. So just sincere appreciation, and the residents also appreciate what you guys are doing as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Paul?
Yeah, everybody has kind of said it already, but you know, I'm just every week I'm impressed with, you know, it seems like every time you turn around, there's either a new restriction or a new interpretation of a restriction, and it's a constantly changing landscape, and it's been very impressed with how everybody is flexible and just rolling with the changes and getting the business of the townspeople done. So thank you to everybody involved.
Thanks. I think everybody's done a fantastic job of being flexible, getting through this. I laugh because on WDEV, they now have a segment that pops up periodically, even on the weekends, just to remind people what day of the week it is. And I think that's been probably one of the greatest assets that I've run across. So with that right there, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.